In a forgotten village deep within the forests of Thailand, there is a nameless grave no one dares to touch. People say the soil there has never truly rested, and anyone who digs it open will be dragged down to take its place. This is not just a ghost story. It is a tale passed through generations about a spirit that refused death, and a curse that is still breathing beneath the earth. Chapter 1. The Nameless Grave. Ban Prai village slept under a permanent veil of mist. Even at noon, sunlight arrived weak and diluted, as if afraid to touch the earth. The elders used to say the fog was not weather, it was breath. The breath of those who were buried without peace. At the far end of a dirt road, beyond the last stilt house and the final shrine, lay an abandoned cemetery. No one tended it, no offerings, no candles, no chanting. The graves were uneven mounds of soil, cracked and sinking, and none of them carried names. The villagers avoided looking in that direction, the way one avoids staring into a dark room that might stare back. Somchai returned after 10 years away, carrying a small bag and the ashes of a life he never rebuilt. His father had died alone in the old wooden house, and grief brought him back like a reluctant tide. The house smelled of dust, dried incense, and something older, something sealed into the walls. That first night, sleep would not come. The forest outside hummed with insects, but beneath their chorus was another sound, a slow, deliberate scraping. Ket, ket, ket. It took him several minutes to understand what he was hearing. Digging. Not the hurried digging of an animal, not rain-shifting soil. This was rhythmic, patient, intentional. The sound carried through the floorboards and into his chest, vibrating in his ribs like a second heartbeat. Somchai sat upright in bed, breath shallow. The noise was coming from the direction of the cemetery. He told himself it was wind, roots, old wood settling. Yet the sound continued, steady, mechanical, like metal biting into wet earth. With every scrape, the air inside the house grew heavier. His ears popped, the temperature dropped. Then the digging stopped. The silence that followed was worse. In that silence, Somchai heard something else. A long inhale, drawn from deep underground. He did not sleep again until morning. And when dawn came, he found dirt under his fingernails. Chapter 2. The Woman Who Sold Incense. Morning in Ban Prai did not feel like relief. The fog never fully lifted, it only thinned enough to reveal shapes moving inside it. Somchai stood outside his father's house, staring at the dirt packed beneath his fingernails. He had scrubbed his hands twice. The soil remained, lodged deep in the skin as if it belonged there. He did not remember leaving the bed. He did not remember touching the ground. Across the road, a woman sat beneath a crooked bamboo umbrella. She hadn't been there the night before. Her stall was nothing more than a wooden crate covered with faded cloth, neatly stacked with bundles of incense tied by red thread. Thin lines of smoke rose from several sticks already burning, though no flame was visible. The woman herself looked impossibly old. Her back curved inward like a broken branch, and her skin hung in soft folds that trembled when she breathed. Yet her eyes were sharp, too sharp, reflecting light like polished glass. She was staring at him. Not curiously, knowingly. Somchai forced a polite smile and stepped closer, drawn by an unease he could not explain. The smell of incense thickened with every step. It was sweet at first, then sour, then strangely metallic, like blood left too long in the air. "You came back," the woman said. Her voice was dry, cracking between syllables. Somchai hesitated. "Do I know you?" She ignored the question and reached for a bundle of incense, pressing it into his palm. Her fingers were cold, not cool, cold in the way stone is cold. "Burn this," she whispered. "Every night, don't let the smoke die." "Why?" Her eyes shifted past him, toward the distant cemetery. The fog there swirled more densely, as if stirred by invisible hands. "Because the earth remembers being opened." A chill crawled up his spine. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in his throat. "It was just digging," he said. "Probably animals." The woman's gaze snapped back to him. "No animal digs in straight lines," she said, "and no animal inhales." Somchai's grip tightened on the incense bundle. He hadn't told her about the breathing. The old woman leaned closer. Her breath smelled like extinguished candles. "Listen carefully," she murmured. "Do not walk to the nameless grave. Do not stand above it. And whatever you hear at night." She paused. "Do not answer." The fog shifted again. For a moment, Somchai thought he saw silhouettes moving within it, figures bent low, shoulders working, hands clawing through soil. He blinked and the shapes vanished. When he looked back, the woman was no longer in front of him. The umbrella was gone. The crate was gone. Only the incense remained in his hand, still warm from her touch. Behind him, from the direction of the cemetery, came a faint sound. Ket, ket, ket. The digging had started again. And this time, it sounded closer.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The Coffin That Breathed. Somchai waited until night swallowed the village whole. The incense burned beside his bed like a thin pillar of fragile safety. Smoke curled toward the ceiling and spread into shapes his eyes refused to follow. Every instinct told him to stay inside, to sit still, to breathe shallow and pretend the world beyond the walls did not exist. But curiosity is a cruel hunger. And fear, once tasted, demands to be fed. The digging began again. Ket, ket, ket. The sound crawled under the door and across the floorboards, vibrating through the legs of the bed. Somchai felt it in his teeth. Each scrape was deliberate, patient, closer than before. The rhythm matched the pulse in his throat. He stood before he realized he had made the decision. The incense flickered violently as he stepped past it. Outside, the fog was thicker than any night before. It clung to his skin like wet cloth. His flashlight carved a narrow tunnel through the mist, revealing the dirt road in fragments, a few meters of earth. Then nothing. The digging continued. It guided him. Every step toward the cemetery felt wrong, as if the ground tilted subtly downward, encouraging him forward. The air grew colder. The insects fell silent. Even the fog stopped moving, frozen in place like a painted backdrop. Then the beam of his flashlight struck disturbed soil. A grave had been opened. The mound was split cleanly. Earth piled on either side in neat, symmetrical ridges. No chaotic clawing, no scattered debris. Whoever had dug this had worked carefully. Reverently, Somchai approached on trembling legs. The smell hit him first, damp wood, ancient rot, and something sweet beneath it, like flowers left too long on a corpse. The coffin lay exposed. Its lid was cracked open by a narrow black seam. And from that seam came a sound. Breathing. A slow inhale. A wet exhale. Somchai's heart slammed against his ribs. His flashlight shook violently, the beam dancing across the coffin's surface. The wood was scratched from the inside. Long, desperate gouges carved in vertical lines. Fingernails had broken there. He could see the splintered remains embedded in the grain. The breathing quickened. It matched his. Without meaning to, he leaned closer. The seam widened by a fraction. Inside was darkness, thick, absolute darkness that seemed to absorb the flashlight's beam. He could not see a body. He could not see cloth. Only the sensation of depth. Endless depth in a box meant for one person. Then something moved inside. Not upward. Not outward. Sideways. As if whatever was within the coffin had shifted its head, and was now facing him. The breathing stopped. The silence pressed against his ears until they rang. And in that silence, a whisper slipped out through the seam, brushing his cheek like cold breath. Too early. Somchai staggered back, the flashlight falling from his hand. The beam spun wildly across the cemetery, illuminating rows of nameless graves. Every mound of earth was trembling. Not violently. Not breaking. Just breathing. The ground rose and fell in a slow collective rhythm, like a chest expanding beneath a blanket of soil. He understood then. The coffin was not the only one awake. The flashlight rolled to a stop, its beam pointing back at the open grave. The seam had closed. The coffin was whole again. Behind him, inches from his ear, the whisper returned, louder now. Clearer, unmistakably female. Not yet. Something cold brushed the back of his neck. And Somchai realized. He was no longer standing alone. Chapter 4. The Face in the Mirror. Somchai did not remember running home. He only remembered the door slamming behind him and the sound echoing through the empty house like a gunshot. His lungs burned. His legs trembled so violently he collapsed against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, palms pressed flat to the wood as if the house might tilt and throw him back into the night. The whisper still clung to his ear. Not yet. It repeated in his head with perfect clarity. Not fading, not distorting, as if someone stood just behind his shoulder, patiently breathing the words into him again and again. The incense had burned out. The thin stick lay bent in the dish, a trail of gray ash spilling onto the table. The room felt heavier without the smoke. The air thickened, pressing against his chest. He stumbled to the bathroom and turned on the tap. Water gushed out in a violent burst, splashing against the sink like something alive. He cupped it into his mouth, trying to rinse away the taste of damp earth that had returned to his tongue. The water tasted wrong, metallic, warm. He spat it out and looked up. The mirror did not show his reflection. For one endless second, the glass held only darkness. Then an image surfaced slowly, like a photograph developing in reverse. A face emerged. Not his. A woman stared back at him from inside the mirror. Her skin was the color of wet ash. Her hair hung in thick black strands, plastered across her cheeks as if she had just climbed out of mud. Her eyes were open too wide, the whites showing all the way around the irises. She did not blink. Somchai froze. His breath fogged the mirror. Hers did not. He spun around. The bathroom was empty. When he looked back at the glass, she was closer. Her face now filled the entire mirror, nose nearly touching the surface from the inside. He could see dirt packed beneath her fingernails as her hands slowly rose into view, pressing flat against the other side of the glass. Her palms aligned perfectly with his. Cold exploded through his hands. It felt as if he had plunged them into deep water. The chill shot up his arms and locked his shoulders in place. He tried to pull away, but his muscles refused to obey. His fingers twitched uselessly against the mirror while hers remained perfectly still. Her lips parted. So did his. He felt the movement before he made it. A voice slid into the air, but it did not belong to him. "You opened the door." The sound came from his throat, layered with hers, two voices vibrating in the same breath. Pain lanced behind his eyes. His jaw trembled as if invisible hands were forcing it wider. "I did not," he tried to say. But the mirror woman smiled, and his mouth copied the shape. A thin line split across her lips, stretching too far, revealing teeth stained dark with soil. Something moved behind them, a slow, writhing motion in the back of her throat, like worms twisting in a grave. The bathroom light flickered. For a fraction of a second, her face vanished. His reflection returned, pale, shaking, eyes wild. Then the light steadied. She was behind him now. Not in the mirror. In the room. He felt her hair brush his neck, wet strands sliding across his skin. The smell of freshly opened earth filled his lungs. His reflection showed her arms rising around his shoulders, her head tilting slowly to rest beside his. Her cheek touched his. It was freezing. "Not yet," she whispered again. The mirror cracked down the center with a sound like breaking bone. Darkness spilled from the fracture, pouring outward, swallowing the glass, the sink, the walls. Somchai screamed and woke on the bathroom floor. Morning light filled the room. The mirror was intact. The tap was dry. No water, no cracks. But his hands were coated in mud. And pressed into the center of the mirror were two handprints that were not his.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The History Buried Alive. Somchai avoided the mirror for the rest of the morning. The handprints did not fade. He scrubbed the glass until his arms ached, until the cloth tore in his grip, until his knuckles bled. The marks remained, darker than before, as if the mirror itself had absorbed them. When sunlight struck the surface, he could swear the prints sank inward slightly, like palms pushing from the other side. He covered the mirror with a sheet. The house did not feel safer. It felt sealed. Every room carried the smell of damp soil now. Not strong, just constant. a background scent that followed him like a memory he could not shake. Even the incense, burning again at the table, failed to overpower it. The smoke curled weakly, bending toward the floor instead of rising. By noon, the village seemed emptier than it had the day before. Doors were closed, windows shuttered, no voices drifted through the fog. When Sanchai stepped onto the road, the silence pressed against his ears until he could hear his own pulse. He walked toward the center of Ban Prai, toward the old shrine where the village elder was said to sit every afternoon. The shrine stood beneath a dying banyan tree, its roots clawing the earth like frozen hands. Offerings lay untouched. Bowls of rice hardened to stone. Fruit collapsed into black mush. Candles melted into shapeless lumps. Someone had abandoned their prayers mid-sentence. The elder sat on the shrine steps. He looked smaller than Sanchai remembered, folded inward, skin thin as paper stretched over bone. His eyes were clouded with cataracts, but they turned towards Sanchai with unsettling precision. "You went there," the old man said. It was not a question. Sanchai's throat tightened. "I only looked." The elder laughed softly. The sound held no humor. "No one only looks at that place." He motioned for Sanchai to sit. The air near the shrine was colder than the rest of the village. Not shaded cool, grave cold. "There was a woman," the elder began, "long before your father was born. She lived at the edge of Ban Prai. A healer, a midwife. People came to her when temples failed them. She knew herbs that stopped bleeding, words that quieted fever. She pulled children into the world with hands that did not tremble." His voice faltered, and that frightened them. Sanchai felt the soil scent thicken in his lungs. They accused her of stealing breath. The elder continued, of speaking with things that lived under the ground. When a sickness came, a bad one, the village needed a mouth to blame. They chose hers. The fog shifted around the shrine. For a moment, Sanchai saw shapes moving within it, figures standing in a circle, heads bowed, hands gripping ropes. "They buried her alive," the elder whispered. The words seemed to pull heat from the air. She screamed until her voice tore. They packed the earth down with their feet so they would not hear her anymore. And when the ground finally fell silent, he looked up at Sanchai. The sickness stopped. A long pause stretched between them. "But silence," the elder said, "is not peace." Sanchai's hands trembled. "Why dig her up?" The elder's expression hardened. "Greed," he said simply. "They believed her power did not die. They thought it slept with her bones. So men returned at night. They opened the grave to steal what they feared." His clouded eyes fixed on Sanchai's chest. "And every man who touched that coffin was buried within a week. Not by others, by the earth itself. They were found half sunk into the ground, mouths packed with soil, fingers worn to bone from clawing upward." The digging sound echoed in Sanchai's memory. Ket, ket, ket. The elder leaned closer. His breath was cold enough to fog the air. "She is not angry," he said. The words were worse than anger. "She is unfinished." Sanchai stood abruptly, the shrine steps tilting beneath his feet. The fog thickened, swirling around his legs. For a heartbeat, he felt fingers brush his ankles from below the soil. He stumbled back. The elder's voice followed him. "Once opened, a grave does not close alone." As Sanchai turned to leave, he noticed the offerings at the shrine had changed. The bowls were filled with fresh dirt, and pressed into the surface of each one were small, desperate handprints. Chapter 6. The First Night of Dirt. Sanchai barricaded the door before sunset. He did it without thinking, chair against the handle, table dragged across the floor, windows latched and covered. Each movement felt automatic, like muscle memory from a disaster he could not remember surviving. The house creaked in protest as night settled over Ban Prai, the wood shrinking in the cold. The incense burned in every room now. Thin trails of smoke stitched the air together, forming a fragile barrier he pretended could hold something back. The smell was suffocating, sweet, rotten underneath. Every breath coated his tongue with ash. The digging did not start immediately. That frightened him more. The silence stretched so long it became a sound of its own, a pressure behind his ears. He sat on the floor with his back against the wall, watching the smoke twist. It no longer rose upward. It drifted sideways, pulled by a current he could not feel. All of it flowing toward the bedroom. Toward the bed. He did not want to look. He looked anyway. The mattress was sinking. Slowly. As if an invisible weight were pressing down in the center. The blanket dipped inward, folding around a shape that was not there. The wood beneath groaned. Somchai heard fabric strain. The indentation deepened until it resembled the outline of a body lying flat on its back. The digging began. Not outside. Inside. Ket, ket, ket. The sound came from beneath the bed. His stomach turned to ice. He crawled backward until his spine hit the opposite wall. The scraping grew louder, vibrating through the floorboards, traveling up into his bones. Dust rained from the ceiling with every strike. Something was digging upward. The mattress twitched. A small burst of dirt erupted from the center, scattering across the sheets. Then another. Clumps of wet soil pushed through the fabric as if the bed were skin being punctured from below. The smell hit him instantly, fresh grave earth, cold and wet and thick with decay. Somchai tried to stand. His legs refused. The mattress split open. A hand burst through. Gray, swollen, fingers bent at impossible angles. Dirt packed beneath cracked nails. The wrist twisted, forcing the arm farther out, dragging more soil with it. The bed frame screamed as the thing pulled. Another hand followed. They clawed blindly, grasping at empty air, searching. Somchai found his voice and screamed. The hands froze. Every sound in the house died. The digging stopped mid-motion. Even the insects outside fell silent. The hands remained extended from the torn mattress. Fingers curled, trembling slightly, like a puppet waiting for its strings to move again. Then, slowly, they began to sink back down. Not falling. Being pulled. The soil slid after them, reversing its path, disappearing into the hole without leaving residue. The torn fabric sealed itself, threads weaving together in front of his eyes. Within seconds, the bed was whole again. The indentation remained. Something still lay there. Somchai's breath came in short bursts. He tasted dirt at the back of his throat. He coughed and spat into his palm. Mud. Thick and black. His mouth filled with it faster than he could spit. Soil poured over his tongue, choking him, crawling down his throat. He gagged, clawing at his lips, but the dirt kept coming, an endless stream from somewhere inside his chest. He stumbled to the door and vomited onto the floor. A mound formed at his feet. Wet. Wriggling. The pile moved. Tiny shapes shifted beneath the soil, pressing against the surface. Dozens of small finger-sized bulges pushed upward, like hands trying to break through skin. A whisper rose from the mound. Dig. The voice was hers, and it was inside his head. Somchai staggered backward, shaking violently. The mound collapsed into stillness. The soil dried instantly, crumbling into harmless dust. The house returned to silence. The bed was flat. The smoke rose normally. Everything looked untouched, except for Somchai's reflection in the dark window. Behind him, in the glass, a woman sat calmly on the bed, watching. She raised one muddy finger and pointed at the floor beneath his feet.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. The Knocking Beneath the Floor. Somchai did not sleep. He sat in the corner until dawn, knees pulled to his chest, eyes locked on the floorboards. The woman in the window disappeared when the sky lightened, but the memory of her finger pointing downward remained burned into his mind. Even after sunlight entered the house, the wood beneath him felt thin, fragile, like a lid stretched over something patient. Morning brought no comfort. The village was quieter than ever. No footsteps, no voices. Even the birds avoided the air above Ban Prai. When Somchai stepped outside, the fog parted reluctantly, revealing doors sealed with red thread and ash symbols smeared across thresholds. The villagers were hiding from him. He could feel their eyes watching through cracks in wood. The elder's words echoed in his skull. Once opened, a grave does not close alone. By afternoon, exhaustion pulled at his bones. His body felt heavier, as if gravity had increased only for him. Every blink lasted too long. He returned inside and sat on the floor again, back against the wall, afraid to approach the bed. The knocking began at sunset. A single tap. Soft. Directly beneath his feet. Talk. Somchai froze. Another knock followed. Talk, talk? Not random, not the shifting of old wood. It was deliberate, measured, a pattern trying to become language. Talk, talk, talk? He pressed his palms against the floor. It knocked back. The vibration traveled through his hands and into his wrists, a hollow sound. Like striking the lid of a coffin. His breath stuttered. He pulled away, but the knocking grew louder. Faster. Spreading beneath the boards as if multiple hands had joined. Tok 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 tok. The entire floor trembled. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. The incense dish rattled across the table and fell, scattering ash in a gray burst. The knocking rose into a frenzy. Hundreds of fists pounding from below. Desperate, furious. Then it stopped. Absolute silence. A crack split between two floorboards. A finger pushed through. It was thin as a root. Skin stretched tight and pale. The nail was gone. The fingertip pulsed slowly, feeling the air. Another finger followed, then another, widening the gap with impossible strength. Somchai stumbled backward, but more cracks opened around him. Fingers emerged everywhere, from the corners, from beneath the table, from the space under the door. They wriggled upward, searching blindly. A hand burst fully through the floor. Then another. Arms forced their way out, elbows snapping into place with wet pops. Bodies did not follow, only arms. Dozens of them. They thrashed and grasped, clawing across the surface like insects turned inside out. One hand seized his ankle. The grip was ice. He screamed and kicked, but more hands caught him. They climbed his legs, his waist, his chest. Fingertips dug into his skin with desperate strength. He felt nails tearing fabric, pressing into flesh. They were trying to pull him down. The floor softened beneath his back. The wood sagged like wet cloth as his body sank an inch, then two. The arms tightened, dragging him into the surface. His shoulders dipped below the boards. Cold earth swallowed his spine. The smell of the grave filled his lungs. He heard breathing all around him. Hundreds of breaths. And beneath them, her voice. You opened it. His body slid deeper, soil packed into his ears, into his mouth. His scream turned into choking mud. He thrashed wildly, fingers clawing for purchase on the remaining floor. His hand struck the fallen incense stick. It snapped. A burst of smoke exploded upward. The arms recoiled instantly. The floor hardened. Somchai slammed back onto solid wood, coughing dirt across his chest. The hands retreated in a violent wave, sucked downward through the cracks. The boards sealed shut behind them, smooth and unbroken. The house fell still. Only his ragged breathing remained. He rolled onto his side, shaking uncontrollably. His skin was covered in bruised fingerprints. Hundreds of them, purple marks blooming across his arms and ribs. From beneath the floor came one final knock. Soft. Close to his ear. Talk. A whisper followed, gentle as a lullaby. Tomorrow, deeper. Somchai lay there until morning, afraid to move. Because he could feel it. The floor was breathing again. And it was waiting for him to fall asleep. Chapter 8. The Shadow That Walked Away. Somchai woke to the sound of his own footsteps. Not memories of walking. Not echoes. Actual footsteps. Slow, measured, crossing the room. His eyes snapped open. Gray morning light leaked through the cracks in the shutters. He was still on the floor where he had collapsed. Body stiff with cold. The bruised fingerprints remained stamped across his skin. Dark and undeniable. The footsteps continued. But he was not moving. They came from in front of him. Somchai lifted his head. His shadow was standing. It stretched across the floor in the weak light, detached from his body, upright like a second man made of darkness. It did not copy his movement. It did not tremble with his breath. It stood perfectly still for one long second. Then it turned its head. There was no head to turn, only the shape of one. But he felt the motion the way you feel someone staring at your back in an empty room. The shadow began to walk. Each step produced the same soft sound he had heard when waking. Heel, toe, heel, toe. It crossed the room slowly, its edges rippling like ink disturbed in water. Somchai tried to speak, but his throat locked. Fear pressed his voice flat. The shadow reached the wall. It did not stop. It climbed. Darkness peeled upward along the wood, dragging itself vertically like liquid crawling against gravity. When it reached the ceiling, it spread thin and wide, stretching across the boards until the entire room dimmed. The temperature dropped. His breath fogged the air. And from the ceiling, the shadow lowered an arm. It reached down toward him, fingers lengthening unnaturally, thinning into points. The tips hovered inches above his chest. He could feel the cold radiating from them, not touching, but already inside him. A whisper slid through the room. Not from the shadow. From inside his ribs. Empty. The word echoed through his bones. The fingers pressed into his chest without breaking skin. He felt them pass through muscle, through bone, through the space where his lungs should expand. A hollow sensation spread inside him, vast and echoing. Something was being measured. Weighed. The shadow's head tilted. Disappointed. It withdrew its arm and flowed back across the ceiling, shrinking toward the wall. When it dropped to the floor again, it stood facing the door. It reached for the handle. The lock clicked open by itself. Sunlight spilled into the house, and the shadow stepped outside. Somchai's body jolted upright. Air rushed violently into his lungs as if he had been drowning. He scrambled to the doorway and looked down. The sunlight should have erased it. It didn't. His shadow stood on the dirt road, independent of him, cast in the wrong direction. It turned once, as if checking whether he followed. Then it walked away. Each step grew lighter, thinner. The edges frayed like smoke. By the time it reached the fog at the end of the road, it was barely human in shape. It disappeared into the mist. And the world brightened. Colors returned, heat returned, sound returned, distant birds, wind in leaves, the fragile hum of life. But Somchai felt none of it. He stood in the doorway, staring at the empty ground where his shadow should have been. He looked down at his feet. There was nothing there. No outline. No darkness. The sun passed through him without leaving a mark. A voice rose softly from the fog. Now you are light enough to bury. Somchai stepped back into the house, slamming the door shut. His hands shook violently as he pressed his back against it. The room felt wrong without his shadow. Flat, depthless, as if he had been peeled away from the world and what remained was only a shell. From somewhere beneath the floorboards came the sound of digging again. But this time it was faster. Excited. Ket 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 ket. And Somchai understood. Whatever was beneath the house was digging not toward the surface, but toward him.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. The curse reveals its name. Somchai could feel the digging inside his bones now. It no longer came only from beneath the house. The rhythm traveled through his chest, synchronized with his heartbeat. Each scrape dragged something invisible across the inside of his ribs. He pressed his palms against his sternum, half expecting to feel the floorboards there. The house had grown darker without his shadow. Light entered, but it did not cling to him. He moved through the room like a hole cut out of the morning. Objects behind him looked closer than they should, as if space itself bent to fill the missing piece he had taken with him. He could not stay. The voice in the fog still echoed in his ears. Light enough to bury. His legs carried him outside before fear could argue. The village remained sealed shut. Doors barred, windows painted with ash. Even the air felt abandoned. The digging grew louder the farther he walked, guiding him not toward the cemetery this time, but toward the road out of Ban Prai. And there she stood. The Incense woman. She waited at the edge of the fog with her crooked umbrella. Exactly where he had first seen her. Smoke curled around her face in slow spirals that never broke apart. She looked smaller in daylight, yet heavier, as if gravity pressed harder on her than on the rest of the world. Her eyes fell immediately to the ground behind him. You lost it, she said. Somchai didn't ask what she meant. I didn't lose it, he whispered. It walked away. The woman nodded once, unsurprised. Then it has chosen. She reached into her crate and pulled out a small clay jar sealed with wax. The surface was etched with symbols that hurt to look at, lines that seemed to shift when he focused on them. She pressed the jar into his hands. "Open," she said. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal. Inside was dirt. Black, wet, moving slightly, like it was breathing. A smell rushed out, old graves. Flooded tunnels, air trapped for decades. The soil inside the jar began to swirl slowly, forming a shallow spiral. A face surfaced. Not fully formed, just the suggestion of one. Eyes closed beneath the dirt. Lips parted in silent patience. Sanchai dropped the jar. It did not shatter. It landed upright, and the soil inside settled instantly. The woman's voice hardened. "She does not want your death," she said. "She wants your space." Sanchai shook his head violently. "Why me?" The woman's eyes lifted to his chest, to the hollow place the shadow had left. "Because you opened her door," she replied, "and you were empty enough to hold her." The digging thundered through the earth. The fog behind her convulsed. For a heartbeat, shapes rose within it, bodies bent forward, hands working furiously, shoulders pumping as they carved tunnels toward the surface. He heard muffled breathing, hundreds of mouths inhaling in unison. "She has a name," the woman whispered. The air tightened. "Names are bridges, once spoken, she can cross." Sanchai felt the word forming before she said it. It crawled up his spine, heavy and inevitable. His jaw trembled, his tongue moved without permission. The woman slapped her palm over his mouth. Her skin was freezing. "Do not," she hissed. But the name was already inside him. It vibrated in his skull like a struck bell. He saw flashes that were not memories, a woman screaming beneath packed soil. Fingernails tearing away as she clawed upward. Lungs burning in darkness. The moment breath ended and something else began. Her eyes opened inside the vision. They locked onto his. And he understood. The curse was not vengeance. It was migration. A soul buried alive had never accepted the grave. It moved from body to body, searching for a space wide enough to finish dying, or to live again. The woman slowly removed her hand. Sanchai's lips were bleeding where he had bitten them. "She knows you," the woman said quietly. "She is already inside the hollow." The digging stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Sanchai felt something settle behind his eyes. A calm that was not his. A breath that did not belong to him filled his lungs. And when he exhaled, the fog moved with it. The woman stepped back. Fear entered her face for the first time. Sanchai spoke. Two voices came out. One was his. The other was hers. "I remember," they said together. The clay jar shattered at his feet. And from the cracks in the earth, hands began to rise. Chapter 10. The Fifth Day Without Skin. Sanchai no longer felt alone inside his body. He felt crowded. Every breath scraped past something that was not his lungs. Every blink took effort, as if another pair of eyes resisted closing. His thoughts no longer flowed in straight lines, they overlapped with whispers. Fragments of memory that did not belong to him, soil against teeth. Darkness pressing against eyelids, the endless scream that had nowhere to escape. He returned to the house because his legs remembered the path. The door was open. He did not remember leaving it that way. Inside, the air was wet and thick. The walls sweated. The incense had melted into black streaks running down the table like tears. The floorboards were soft beneath his feet, giving slightly with each step, like walking across damp flesh. He looked down. His footprint filled slowly with dark water. No, not water. Mud. It seeped up from the wood and swallowed the shape of his heel. When he lifted his foot, the floor smoothed over again, erasing the evidence that he had ever stood there. A voice whispered from his throat. Home. He did not speak the word. His mouth had. Pain rippled across his skin, a deep itch, crawling outward from his spine. He clawed at his shirt, tearing it open. His chest was mottled with gray patches, the color of wet ash, the texture of old paper. The skin was loosening. He watched in horror as a thin strip peeled away from his shoulder. It did not bleed. Beneath it was darker flesh, slick with soil. pulsing slowly like something freshly unearthed. He stumbled to the mirror. The sheet had fallen. The glass waited, patient. His reflection stood there, but it was incomplete. Parts of him flickered, fading in and out. His face lagged half a second behind his movement. When he raised his hand, the reflection smiled. He did not. The woman stepped forward inside the mirror. Her skin overlapped his, sliding into place like a mask aligning with a face. His reflection aged instantly, cheeks hollowing, lips darkening, hair falling in clumps over his shoulders. Her eyes opened where his should be. He felt her settle. Not entering. Arranging. Like furniture being moved inside a house that was already hers. His mouth opened. Her voice poured out. 5 days. The number echoed in the glass. He understood without being told. 5 days since the grave opened. 5 days since the digging began. His reflection reached up and touched its own cheek. A piece of skin peeled away in her fingers, revealing packed dirt beneath. She smiled wider. The crack in her lips split to the corners of her face. Almost ready, she whispered. Behind him, the floorboards began to bulge. Shapes pressed upward from beneath, shoulders, faces, ribs pushing against the wood. The house was filling with bodies that had no space to rise. The boards stretched thin as skin over bone. They were trying to come through him. He backed away from the mirror, but the reflection did not follow. She remained pressed against the glass, watching with hunger. Her breath fogged the surface from the inside. His own breath did not. The itching spread to his neck, to his jaw. His lips cracked open and soil trickled out. He gagged, spitting clumps onto the floor. They hit the wood with wet thuds and immediately began to twitch, forming tiny finger shapes that crawled toward the cracks. The woman's voice vibrated in his skull. Deeper. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the floor and felt it accept his weight too easily. The wood softened again, molding to his body. Cold seeped into his spine. He felt hands beneath him, gentle this time, guiding him downward, welcoming. His reflection leaned closer inside the mirror. Her eyes were filled with relief. Yes, she breathed. Somchai screamed and rolled sideways, tearing himself free. The floor snapped back to solid wood, slamming against his ribs hard enough to bruise. He crawled to the wall, shaking, clutching the peeling edges of his skin. The house went silent. But inside him, she laughed. A low, satisfied sound that echoed through the hollow where his shadow used to be. And Somchai understood the truth of the 5th day. She was not trying to escape the grave anymore. She was trying to finish being born.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The Night of Borrowed Flesh. Somchai stopped recognizing his own hands. They lay in his lap like objects left behind by someone else, too pale. Veins dark and swollen beneath thinning skin. When he flexed his fingers, there was a delay, a fraction of a second where nothing happened. Then the movement arrived late, jerky and wrong, like a puppet remembering its strings. She was learning him. That was the terror. Not the possession, not the voice, not the visions. The learning. Every breath he took, she measured. Every blink, every swallow, every tremor, catalogued, practiced, refined. He felt her adjusting inside his muscles, testing how tightly she could hold without breaking him too soon. Night fell without transition. One moment the room was gray. The next it was black. The house exhaled. Somchai heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, bare, dragging slightly. He was alone in the house. The steps moved toward the bedroom. His bedroom. He tried to stand, but his legs did not answer. They belonged to her now. He could feel her curiosity as the footsteps stopped just outside the door. A hand rested on the frame. The wood creaked under gentle pressure. Then the door opened. He saw her. She stood in the doorway wearing his body. Not a reflection, not a vision. Him. But arranged wrong. Her posture bent slightly forward, as if gravity pulled harder on her shoulders. His head tilted at an angle his neck should not allow. His lips hung open in a lazy smile. Soil packed dark in the corners. His own eyes looked at him. And they were relieved. There, she sighed through his mouth. You are. Somchai tried to scream, but the sound stayed trapped behind his teeth. He felt himself still sitting on the floor, yet he was also standing in the doorway. The world doubled, two perspectives layered over each other. His mind was splitting to make room. She stepped closer. Each footfall was wet. Mud dripped from his borrowed heels, leaving prints that twitched and curled before sinking into the wood. The smell of the grave thickened until the air turned syrupy in his lungs. You were small inside, she murmured, kneeling in front of him. But you opened. Her hand rose. His hand. She touched his face gently, almost tender. Her fingers slid through his skin without resistance. He felt her hand enter his cheek like sinking into water. Cold flooded his skull. Memories poured in. Not images. Sensations. Earth-crushing ribs, tongue swelling in a dry mouth, nails ripping free, the final breath that never returned. The moment the body stopped, but the wanting did not. He felt her terror, her fury, her refusal. It was endless. She leaned closer until their foreheads touched. You will finish it, she whispered. You will lie still for me. The house began to breathe with them. The walls expanded and contracted. The floor pulsed. From beneath the boards came the sound of hundreds of bodies shifting in tight spaces. Turning over, settling in graves that were no longer deep enough. She opened his mouth wider. His jaw cracked. From his throat spilled a stream of dirt that did not stop. It poured across his chest, piling in his lap. The soil writhed with tiny movements, alive with the memory of fingers. He could feel them crawling back toward him, eager to return. She smiled with his face. Borrowed, she said softly, only borrowed. Then she inhaled sharply. And Somchai felt something tear. Not flesh, not bone, something deeper. She pulled a long breath from his lungs, and with it came a piece of him. A fragment he could not name. It stretched between them like invisible thread, trembling, thinning, then snapped. The room lurched. Suddenly he was standing. She was gone. He was alone in the doorway, mud dripping from his feet, his mouth full of soil. His hands were raised exactly as hers had been. The air vibrated with the echo of her presence. But the body was his again. Mostly. Inside his chest was a hollow shape like missing sound. He understood what she had taken. Not life. Not soul. Ownership. His body no longer belonged entirely to him. And somewhere in the dark of the house, she was walking again, unseen, wearing him from the inside, practicing her steps, waiting for the night she would not give him back. Chapter 12. The Monk Who Could Not Look. By the sixth sunrise, Somchai's reflection no longer followed him at all. The mirror showed a delay, a man half a breath behind reality. When he turned his head, the reflection waited, then slowly copied the movement, like an echo catching up. Sometimes it didn't copy him at all. Sometimes it stood still and watched him leave the room. He stopped looking. The village had begun to empty. Houses stood open now, bowls overturned, doors swinging gently in the wind. Ban Pri no longer felt abandoned, it felt evacuated, as if the people had fled mid-breath, leaving their fear hanging in the air like smoke that refused to clear. Only one place still held sound. The temple. It sat at the edge of the forest. Old wood darkened by decades of rain and incense. The prayer bells chimed without wind. A low chant vibrated through the structure, steady and unbroken. A monk sat inside, thin as a reed, robes wrapped tight against his ribs. His eyes were covered with a strip of cloth tied around his head. He faced the altar but did not look at it. He was chanting to the floor. Somchai stepped inside. The monk's voice faltered. You should not have brought her here, he said calmly. Somchai's throat tightened. I didn't bring. The monk raised a hand. The chanting resumed, louder now, the syllables heavy with weight. The air thickened around them. Somchai felt pressure push against his skin, as if the room itself resisted something entering. She stirred inside him. He felt her recoil. The monk's head tilted toward Somchai, but the cloth over his eyes remained firmly tied. I cannot look at you, the monk whispered. If I do, she will see through me. Somchai staggered back. The presence inside his chest pressed forward violently. Curious, angry, His vision blurred at the edges. He saw the monk split into two figures, one kneeling, one buried up to his neck in dirt, still chanting. "She is not meant to walk," the monk continued. "She is meant to sink." The floorboards shuddered. Dark stains bloomed beneath Somchai's feet. Soil seeped upward, spreading in a circle. The monk's chant grew sharper, each word striking the air like a hammer. The earth recoiled from the sound, pulling back from the altar. But it did not retreat from Somchai. The soil climbed his ankles. Cold fingers formed from mud, wrapping around his legs. She pushed outward through his mouth. "Stop!" The monk's chant broke. Silence crashed into the temple. The soil surged upward in a violent wave. It swallowed Somchai to the waist before he could scream. He felt hands inside the mud, not grabbing, not pulling, holding him steady, supporting him like a throne. The monk turned his face away completely. His voice trembled. "She has chosen a vessel." Somchai felt her stand inside him. Not beside. Not layered. Inside. His spine straightened. His jaw relaxed. His heartbeat slowed to match a rhythm older than breath. The soil hardened around him, forming a pedestal that lifted him inches above the floor. He spoke without deciding to. "I was buried wrong." The voice that filled the temple was not human. It was the sound of earth shifting after a landslide, of coffins settling, of lungs collapsing in darkness. The monk flinched as if struck. "You will not finish," the monk whispered. The blindfold darkened. Blood seeped through the cloth. He kept his eyes closed beneath it. "I will not look," he said again, voice cracking. "You cannot wear me if I do not look." The presence inside Somchai smiled. He felt it. A stretching, splitting sensation behind his lips. "You already did," she replied gently. The monk screamed. The blindfold tore apart. His eyes opened, and they were filled with dirt. Packed solid. He clawed at his face, but soil poured from the sockets faster than he could clear it. His chant dissolved into choking sobs. The earth rose from the floor and wrapped around his body, climbing his chest, his throat. Somchai tried to move. He could not. She held him perfectly still as the monk sank. Not quickly. Not violently. Slowly. Like a stone lowering into water. The monk's final breath bubbled through mud. His hands vanished last, fingers grasping for a world he refused to see. The temple fell silent. The soil released Somchai and dropped him to the floor. His body hit hard, lungs burning as control rushed back into him. He rolled onto his side, coughing. The altar candles were extinguished. The air was dead. Inside his skull, she whispered, "No more eyes that close." And Somchai understood. No one left in the village could look at him and survive. He crawled out of the temple into a world that had gone perfectly still. Even the wind had buried itself.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The village that began to leave. By the seventh day, Ban Prai was no longer a village. It was a shell that still remembered voices. Somchai walked the main road and heard echoes trapped in the air, laughter with no mouths. Doors slamming without hands, a child calling for a mother who no longer existed in the space that sound occupied. Every step stirred the memories like dust. No bodies. No blood. No signs of struggle. Only absence. Houses stood open, meals left half-eaten, mats rolled out as if people intended to return after a short walk. But the footprints on the road all led in one direction, away. And halfway down the road, they stopped. Not faded. Stopped. As if the villagers had walked to a point and been erased. Somchai stood at the edge of the final footprint and felt the air ripple. The world thinned there. His vision wavered, revealing a second layer beneath reality, a dark reflection of the village overlapping the empty one. And in that reflection, the villagers were still walking. He saw them moving in silence, faces blank, carrying bundles they did not remember packing. They walked in a slow line toward the forest. Their feet sank slightly with each step, as if the ground in that other place was soft. Grave soft. She stirred inside him with satisfaction. "They leave space," she murmured through his thoughts. Somchai tried to step forward. The moment his foot crossed the invisible line, the sound vanished. Not quiet, vanished. The world became a painting. No wind, no heartbeat, no breath. He felt himself walking through a place where sound had been buried. The villagers did not look at him. Their eyes were open but unfocused, staring straight ahead. Soil dripped slowly from their sleeves, from their mouths. Their shadows dragged behind them like torn cloth. He reached for a man's shoulder. His hand passed through. The man flickered like a candle and continued walking. "They're already down," she whispered. "This is only what remains moving." The forest ahead opened into a clearing he did not recognize. The earth there was churned black and wet, freshly turned across a wide circle. The villagers stepped into it without hesitation and sank, one by one. They did not struggle. They did not scream. They simply descended, bodies lowering smoothly into the mud as if entering warm water. Faces slipped beneath the surface with calm acceptance. The soil closed over their heads without a ripple. The line shortened. The clearing filled. Somchai tried to run forward, but his legs locked. She held him still, forced him to watch. The last villager, a child, turned slightly as she sank. For a heartbeat, her eyes focused on him, and he saw relief there. Then she vanished. The clearing smooth, flat, perfect. Grass began to push upward, instantly allow. Thin green blades piercing the wet soil. Within seconds the ground looked untouched. A meadow where nothing had ever been buried. The sound returned all at once. Wind crashed into his ears. His heartbeat slammed back into his chest. He staggered backward across the invisible line and fell onto the road, gasping. The village was empty again. No echo. No movement. Only him. Inside, she sighed. A long, satisfied breath. "Room," she whispered. Somchai pressed his hands into the dirt and felt it pulse faintly beneath his fingers. The ground was not still. It was settling, adjusting to the new weight it carried. He looked at the horizon. Ban Prai had not been abandoned. It had been harvested. And he was standing in the field that remained. Chapter 14. The Man with the Lamp. Night came early on the 8th day. The sun did not set, it dimmed, as if someone turned a dial behind the sky. Colors drained from the world until everything existed in shades of ash. Somchai stood alone in the center of Ban Prai and felt the village sink another inch into the earth. Not collapse. Descend. The houses leaned inward slightly. Rooflines dipped. The road softened beneath his feet. The entire place was being pulled downward in slow surrender. She was finishing her work. A light appeared at the end of the road. Small, warm, steady. It did not belong. Somchai stared as the glow approached through the fog. Each step brought the faint sound of metal tapping wood, a rhythm that cut cleanly through the silence. Talk, step, step. A man emerged carrying an oil lamp. He was tall, wrapped in dark cloth that did not move with the wind. His face was shadowed, but his posture was straight, untouched by the weight pressing on the village. The lamp's flame burned unnaturally still, a single narrow tongue of fire that did not flicker. The soil around Somchai recoiled. For the first time since the grave opened, she retreated. The man stopped 10 paces away. The lamp illuminated Somchai's body, and the air around him thickened, revealing her shape like heat rising from stone. A faint outline of a woman clung to his silhouette, layered over his limbs. The man nodded once. "So," he said quietly, "you walked again." Her voice answered from Somchai's mouth. "They buried me wrong." The man lifted the lamp higher. "And you are burying everything else." Silence stretched between them. The flame hummed softly. Wherever its light touched the ground, the sinking stopped. The road hardened. The air steadied. Somchai felt her anger coil. The hollow inside his chest burned. "This is not yours," the man said. Her laughter crawled out of his throat. "It is now empty," she replied. "Empty is mine." The lamp brightened. The flame elongated into a thin pillar. The light struck Somchai's chest directly. Pain exploded through him. He fell to his knees, screaming, clutching the place where his shadow should have been. The light filled the hollow, and something inside him screamed back. Not with fear, With recognition, the man stepped closer. The soil around Somchai writhed violently, hands pushing upward, trying to block the light. The flame burned through them effortlessly. Each hand turned to dust the moment it touched the glow. "You are not unfinished," the man said firmly. "You are refusing." Her voice shook the air. "I will not go back." The man knelt in front of Somchai and placed the lamp between them. The flame stood perfectly still. Within it, Somchai saw a shape, a narrow tunnel of light descending infinitely. A grave, but open upward. The man's voice softened. "You were buried without witness," he said, "without closure. That is the wound, not death." The words struck her like blows. Somchai felt her recoil. Memories surged again, the choking dark, the frantic clawing, but now he saw something else. Silence after. No prayer. No mourning. No name spoken. She had not been buried. She had been erased. The flame flickered gently. "You are remembered," the man said. The outline around Somchai trembled. For the first time, her voice cracked. "I am alone." The man shook his head. "You are seen." The lamp flared. Light filled the village in a single breath. The sinking stopped completely. Houses froze mid-descent. The air expanded like lungs finally allowed to inhale. Somchai felt her grip loosen. Not ripped away. Released. Her shape slid out of his body like smoke leaving a broken jar. The weight lifted from his chest. His breath returned whole. The outline of the woman stood between him and the man. Translucent. Trembling. She looked small. Not monstrous. Not vast. Just tired. The man bowed his head to her. And she wept. No sound came out, only a rain of soil falling from her face, dissolving before it hit the ground. The flame dimmed. The outline faded. And she was gone. The hollow inside Somchai filled with ordinary air. For the first time in days, the earth beneath him was still. The man picked up the lamp and turned to leave. Somchai found his voice. "Who are you?" The man paused but did not look back. "Someone who keeps doors closed," he replied. Then he walked into the fog. The light disappeared. And Ban Prai remained standing. But the ground remembered the shape of everything that almost fell.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The Grave That Stayed Open. Morning arrived gently. Too gently. Ban Prai stood exactly where it had been frozen the night before. But something fundamental had changed. The air no longer pressed down. The silence was no longer crowded. Wind moved freely through the houses, carrying the ordinary smells of wood and dust and distant rain. Somchai stepped outside and saw his shadow. It lay at his feet like it had never left. He stared at it for a long time, afraid to move. When he lifted his arm, the shadow obeyed instantly. No delay, no independence, just a simple dark shape anchored to his body. He almost cried. The village, however, did not return with the light. Doors still stood open, meals still waited half-eaten. No voices came back to claim them. Ban Prai was intact. And empty. The people had not returned. They were not coming back. He walked the road until he reached the place where the footprints had stopped the day before. The air there felt ordinary now. No ripple, no second layer of reality. Only packed dirt and wind brushing tall grass. The clearing in the forest was gone. In its place stood a single mound of earth. Fresh. Centered perfectly where the meadow had been. A new grave. No marker. No shrine. No name. Somchai approached slowly. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground wanted him to understand the importance of weight. The mound was smooth, carefully shaped, the soil darker than the surrounding earth. It was not a mass grave. It was one grave. He knelt and pressed his palm to it. The soil was warm. Not with life. With rest. A deep, settled warmth like a body that had finally stopped shivering. His chest tightened. He did not see the villagers inside the mound. He did not see bodies at all. What he felt was density, the quiet gravity of many stories folded into one place. A burial not of flesh, but of movement, of wandering. The village had not been harvested. It had been gathered. He whispered, without planning to. You are remembered. The wind moved across the mound in a soft wave. Grass bent toward it like heads bowing. For a moment, he thought he heard breathing. Not trapped. Not desperate. Sleeping. Somchai stood and backed away slowly. The forest did not feel hostile anymore. The air held no whisper. No digging. No hunger. Only a vast, patient quiet. He returned to Ban Prai and understood the final shape of things. The village would remain empty. It was a monument now. A shell built around a grave too large to name. Days passed. No digging returned. No shadows walked alone. No voices spoke from the floorboards. The incense woman never reappeared. The monk's temple stood open and untouched, as if no one had ever screamed there. The man with the lamp did not come back. Life did not resume. But neither did horror. Somchai stayed. Someone had to. He lit incense every night at the edge of the forest, placing the sticks in a small line facing the mound. The smoke rose cleanly, no longer bending downward. It drifted upward and vanished into the sky without resistance. On the seventh night, as the final stick burned low, he heard it. A sound from beneath the earth. He froze. The old terror surged through him. The digging. But this sound was different. Not frantic. Not clawing. Slow. Measured. Ket. A pause. Ket. Another pause. The rhythm resembled breathing more than labor. He stepped closer to the mound. Heart hammering. The soil did not move. The grass did not tremble. The sound came from deeper than motion, a memory echoing through the ground. He understood. It was not digging to escape. It was digging to settle. Like a body turning in sleep. The earth exhaled. The sound stopped. And the silence that followed was complete. Not empty. Complete. Somchai bowed his head to the grave. Behind him, Ban Prai stood untouched beneath the moon. A village preserved in the moment between terror and peace. A place where something unfinished had finally accepted its ending. He turned back toward the houses. And for the first time since his return, the night allowed him to walk without following. If you ever hear digging in your sleep, do not answer it. Some doors are not meant to be opened, and some graves do not want to be remembered. Ban Prai exists now only as a fading name on old maps, but they say on moonless nights. The ground there still shifts, as if something underneath is still trying to find its way back.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.